All right, talking Cowboys with Jeff Cavanaugh. I had plenty of things that I wanted to discuss with you, and then Dak got hurt, so that kind of changes the direction of this. So let's just start with Dak. I'm sure you've had plenty of time to digest everything that goes into Dak's injury, but what are the things that stand out to you, whether it involves Dak and his future or how the Cowboys are going to play things moving forward, just the things that I guess jump to the top of your head?
Oh man, there's like 3.6 million of them. One is that your team goals for the season are likely gone, but oddly enough, it's also the year that they're best equipped to have their quarterback get hurt. So while I don't think they have a chance to do anything like in the postseason this year, they could win this division. They are finally equipped with a good backup quarterback. You just hoped that if you ever needed him, you'd need him for 2 or 3 weeks and not the season. So, man, that sucked.
Could you also make an argument too that with all of the holes defensively, that this is maybe the year where you don't want the good backup quarterback? That like
yeah, maybe
like, you know, in years past, like when maybe they had less holes, it was more of a plug and play, but like, and obviously Jerry's not, I know, and I've seen you discuss, and there's great merit to the whole tank discussion, and now it's even more in play, but like Jerry's not going to do that because they can win the division. That's a home playoff game, and the businessman will not allow, you know, any long-term thought here.
Look, the team is too good to tank, really. I mean, on the strength of your wide receivers, you're going to win 4 to 6 games. So, it just sucks because Dak, the thing about Dak is we don't know these athletes. I mean, you are good enough at your job that you do know some of these Texas Rangers. But for the most part, we don't know these pro athletes, but you can get a pretty good feel for who they are. And to me, the biggest thing was just, I don't get emotional about my sports anymore, like wins and losses. You just kind of observe it and analyze it. And you would like the team that you cover and cheered for growing up to do well. That'd be great. But just seeing Dak crying brought me a sports tear for the first time, and I have no idea how long. And he's not crying because it physically hurt. He's crying because of the work that he's put in and knowing that he's not going to be able to play the rest of the year and try to accomplish what they wanted to accomplish. So the biggest thing is just that it sucks. It sucks for him. It sucks that the business of football led to him being on a 1-year deal when he got hurt. But such is football. And we'll play another game next week with Andy Dalton at the helm, and we shall see.
So, okay, Dak's future, that's obviously a big part of this because, you know, the Cowboys could make the playoffs, and that's fun. And, you know, playoff games are always exciting, but I think their ceiling, as you mentioned, it's changed dramatically. It's lowered. With Dak's future, they could franchise him again. They could obviously come to some sort of an agreement. They could move on. What do you think is most likely here less than 24 hours after the injury?
I think he'll still be here. The interesting thing is that I talked about this probably a couple of months ago. Like having Andy Dalton on the team, there's no doubt in my mind that the front office is curious what this team looks like with an average quarterback. Mm-hmm. And Andy Dalton's an average quarterback. So if you're able to win games, could that influence what they think about the money going to Dak Prescott? Sure, it could, because their actions tell us they're not quite as high on him as, for instance, I am. I would have given him a deal 2 years ago and then a year ago. And then this offseason, whatever hurdle we couldn't get over contractually, I would have said, well, you're the quarterback. It's the most important thing on the field. So, all right, you win. Here you go. Here's your contract. And they didn't. So they have, regardless of how big, they have some sort of pause when it comes to giving him market value and what he wants in a contract. And so the injury certainly doesn't make it easier. And in some ways, they might benefit from that monetarily, where you get to this offseason and that can affect maybe what he would be worth on the open market, and maybe he's willing to make some concessions contractually. And look, this is why people hold out. This is why people want their money, because you never know in football. So it sucks for Dak, but I do think that he's going to be a Cowboy, whether it's the tag, whether it's a long-term deal. I don't think that he's taken his last snap as a Cowboy, and I'm pretty darn confident in that.
Yeah, I agree with that. I saw some people tweeting that Dak's last game is a Cowboy, and I just don't. I'd be really shocked. And then neither of us are doctors, but it seems like this is similar to the Allen Hurns injury, and everyone's different. Every individual, their body composition is different, but it does seem like this is the type of injury that should not, have any sort of lingering effect. Now, does it change the way they try to use Dak? Maybe, but it doesn't seem like Dak in 2021 should be, a quarterback of lesser ability than Dak in 2020. And I think a part of that too, you mentioned the receivers. So you made the comment, and I'm always skeptical of like guys who have never played, crowning.
What did I do?
No, but you're right. You said that by the end of the year, I think CeeDee Lamb would be this team's best receiver. And while Amari is still, I think, a special receiver, there are things about Amari that they're so enigmatic that I think it's very easy to attach yourself to CeeDee. I mean, yesterday, I don't know that it's fair to say it was his coming out party, but he was awesome. Michael Gallup was kind of non-existent, and then the last drive he makes like 2 awesome catches. He's had some huge catches already, and then Amari was really a non-factor, but he did make a big 3rd down catch that helped the Cowboys. The reality is, like, they've got, like, I think the Rams with Kupp and Robert Woods are kind of interchangeable. Like, one week Kupp looks like the super stud, the next week it's Woods, and they do such a good job. The Cowboys have 3 of those guys. I know there's been talk because of the holes elsewhere, like maybe moving one. You signed Amari, can you trade him, and all this. Here's the couple of things. I've learned this with baseball. You have depth until you don't. All it takes is one injury, and then all of a sudden a position of depth is not anymore. But obviously the goals of 2020, as you indicated, they possibly have changed. Maybe not internally, but just what's realistic. What do you make of the receiving core? I mean, they have three guys who could be the best receiver on multiple teams, and that's a very rare thing to have.
Yeah, and I think in today's NFL, that gives you a big advantage over most teams that you play. So now you're 2 and 3, so it doesn't look like a huge advantage because you have so many weaknesses elsewhere. But they've been really unlucky this year. I mean, McCarthy takes the job, and then Travis Frederick retires. So you lost your center, then you lose both offensive tackles, you lose your tight end, you've lost your 2 best corners have been out the last few weeks until this week when Anthony Brown played. You lose Van Der Esch. Like, they've been so snake bitten by injury that we don't get to know what this team was going to be. And their free agency haul looks like it was a bust. Looks like they really messed up in terms of Everson Griffin and Dontari Poe and Gerald McCoy. That's just unlucky, but their free agency was a big nothing, and that hurts. So, like, where they are in terms of team building, I don't know. I think a lot of GMs, if they had job security, which the one here certainly does, but he wouldn't do this, but some GMs with great job security might look at the roster and be like, crap, we got a lot we got to do here. But I don't think this team ever will. And so, assuming Dak can come back and be healthy, having him and those 3 wide receivers, you just got to survive everywhere else. The problem is that right now, I don't think this team can survive everywhere else because you can't survive on the O-line because you're missing $30 million a year out there. You can't survive on defense because what do you have? You got Tank and Aldon Smith. Jalen played well this week, but like, you've got a couple players that you can depend on. And with Tank, it's not even that you can depend on him to be a great pass rusher anymore. You can just depend on him to play hard and help your defense. So the receivers part of it, I think the idea, I think it's great in terms of you've got to talk about everything for team building, and it's great for sports radio to have opinions on terms of what do you think you could get for guys, and would you do this if it could help you improve that? But to me, Michael Gallup would be basically untouchable. I mean, to have a guy that's that good at that important of a position, making that little money, I'm not moving that. You're not going to come up with a package that makes me want to move that. Not at all. And they're in a great position. The decision they're going to make on their receivers comes either this next offseason or the one after, when Amari Cooper's guaranteed money runs out, Michael Gallup's contract runs out, and you got to decide who's going to be here, who's not, how are we going to do that? Can we trade somebody, and blah, 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 blah. I'm not giving up part of my biggest strength to strengthen something else, because the thing that you're really strong at is the thing that wins games in the NFL right now.
Yeah. To me, what's interesting with the receiving stuff, and I don't know what you could get for Amari. I don't, I don't look at yesterday. Like, I know a lot of people, and even myself during the game, I was like, where's Amari? Like, I don't look at, as I thought about it, I don't look at yesterday as like a bad game for Amari. I look at yesterday as, hey, like Cedric Wilson was giving you stuff. CeeDee Lamb was awesome. You use Zeke and obviously after Dak got hurt, he started to play a bigger role. I think you'd like the guy you paid $20 million to be your best receiver weekly, but the reality is, like, talent-wise, CeeDee Lamb is good enough to be your best receiver several weeks. Michael Gallup is good enough. And I mean, if Amari Cooper had, as quiet of a game when his receiving buddies were Allen Hurns and Joe off the street, that's like concerning. If it's because you got Gallup and CeeDee Lamb, maybe that's just the way it played out last week. I don't know. Like, is yesterday a concern with Amari, or is it just a product of, we got so many weapons here and we can't feature everyone every week?
No, I have no problem with how it went. The only thing that's curious to me about the wide receivers right now is how many snaps they're playing. Like, Coopers have gone like this.
Yeah.
CDs have gone like this. And you're getting more Cedric Wilson and Noah Brown. But those guys are performing when they're out there, so you can't even really complain about that. It's just curious that your first-round pick, who's playing great, I believe CeeDee Lamb ran 25 routes last night.
Yeah.
Or yesterday. And had 11 catches on 25 routes. So, like, that's stupid. So I don't know. Amari, the thing about Amari with me is that every wide receiver is very different. And with Amari Cooper, the one thing that he's going to bring you when he's right is absolute elite route running. He's going to get separation. He's going to be open. The thing that you're going to get from CeeDee Lamb is, I don't care where you throw the ball, I'll catch it. And Amari doesn't have that. Amari doesn't have, I'm running full speed this way, you leave it behind me, no problem. I'll contort my body. I'll make the circus catch outside the frame. I'll take a hit and it'll be great. Amari, it's weird to say this about a great wide receiver. Amari doesn't have great hands. He doesn't have a huge catch radius. He has an elite skill set at getting open. And when you're open, you're going to catch the ball more often than not, and it's going to work out fine. So, like, I don't have any alarm bells about Amari Cooper. He's weird because his body language, you don't know.
Yeah.
You'll never know, like, is he pouting? Is he ecstatic? Is he, like, you just never know, because it's always kind of the same and it all looks kind of bored, even though I don't think he's bored. It's just his demeanor. But no, I don't worry about it. If CD's going to have 11 catches for 100 and whatever, and Gallup's going to end up with, what did he end up with after those two big catches? Had to be plenty of yards, just because those two catches were worth plenty of yards. It doesn't matter who makes the catches, but that's just the thing about a salary cap league. When you have really good players and their contracts up and you decide who to pay and who not to pay, technically, unless it's a quarterback, none of them are worth it. You decided to play tank because good defensive ends that are good pass rushers are hard to find. So you pay them when you have them. Wide receivers, if you have a great one and you don't have great ones around them, you pay them because it's great to have a great receiver. If you happen to luck into having other guys who are really good at it, and now the highly paid one isn't having huge numbers, whatever. It's just being balanced out by salary cap bargains that are balling, and that's cool. So I'm not worried about him, but he's the one that I wonder a year or 2 years from now, what could you do for your team?
Yeah, and
you move somebody.
It's tough to, I don't know. You got a running back you're paying $15 million a year to, and whether or not we think that contract's worthwhile, and I think we both are on the side where it's not. You've done it. Like, it's happened. You're paying Amari $20 million. It's just like, I think it's tough when you've got as many holes as the Cowboys do, especially now it's not just on the other side of the ball. The offensive line, like, will Tyron ever play again, and how reliable can he be? And I mean, you got holes now on the line. You got holes on pretty much every spot of the defense. It's tough to pay a running back and a receiver top dollar in addition to likely a quarterback. And if you're not going to be just nails in the drafts, put together a team that's capable of winning a Super Bowl.
Yeah, and again, they hurt themselves really bad with free agency this year, because if you think about it right now and you say, hey, what are the Cowboys team needs? I would contend it's defensive tackle, defensive end, maybe linebacker, safety, corner, offensive line. It's everything but wide receiver, tight end, if you're counting on Jarwin to come back, but like, you're good at wide receiver. You might be good at tight end. You have your running backs, whether you think you're good at it or not, and maybe your quarterback. But that's why I think that a lot of GMs would look at this team if they had the job security and go, guys, we're not close. Like, a lot of teams will go into an NFL draft, for instance, and be like, all right, man, we somewhere in here, we've got to get some help at D tackle and some depth at corner. The Cowboys are going to go in and be like, all right, we could really use a starter at D tackle, D end, linebacker, corner, safety, maybe an offense on the offensive line in one spot or two. Like, this is a team that you were counting on Dak to really carry a lot once you had the injuries that you had. And now you're just looking at the roster going, that's not a very good roster. And 2 months ago, I thought it was a really good roster. And now I'm like, bad roster.
It changes pretty quickly. All right, last thing, defensively, Jalen played well. DeMarcus Lawrence finally had a sack. It still feels like only 2 sacks against the Giants. I know that, Daniel Jones is athletic, but I don't know. Either way, is there a bright spot for this defense where you think, moving forward, whether it's the rest of this year or, hey, like, we can at least take this to 2021 and maybe build a little bit around it? Is there anything that kind of jumps out?
Tank, I'm glad Tank got a sack, because last week I talked about the numbers when Tank's on the field versus when he's not, and you're better against the pass, you're better against the run, your sack rate is better, your turnover rate, everything's better when Tank's on the field. So even though he's playing through a knee thing right now, you're better when Tank's on the field. He's still a good player. Now, we do know how much these guys make, and so he's going to get killed because you don't make $20 million to be a good run defender and improve your defense, but he does. Going forward, I think he'll still be a good player. Jalen Smith is a wild card because you don't know. 2018, he was good. The rest of his career has not been very good. This season has not been good. Yesterday was good. Leighton Vander Esch is the same way when he gets back. As a rookie, he was great. Everything else, it was like, where'd he go? What happened to him? So I don't know. I don't know what to hang your hat on with this defense. Even like Aldon Smith. The positive is you have Aldon Smith on a bargain contract. Bad news is it runs out at the end of this year. So that's not a going forward thing. There's nothing on this defense going forward. Cheeto, contract up. Jordan Lewis, contract up. Xavier Woods, contract up. So you basically have nothing other than Trayvon Diggs and Anthony Brown in the secondary. You have Jalen Smith locked in. You got Tank locked in. There's very little known about this team going forward other than they're going to get good wide receiver play. And hopefully the quarterback's okay and sticks around.
Should we hold open tryouts for the defense?
Yeah, I've played a lot of flag. There's some guys out there that can play. We'll see if we can round some guys up. They probably should. It's rough out there. Although, you know what? What was it? 15, 16, 17, 18. 18 of those points were either on the offense or special teams. They were going to punt until you had too many guys on the field. Then they kick a field goal. You had turnovers that led to 15 points. So that's the weird thing is individually, they're not that talented and they get lost a lot and they give up these giant plays, but somehow in there, they're kind of surviving, except when they don't. It's just maddening when they don't, because you're like, oh my God, all these guys are terrible. And then later in the game, you realize there had been a bunch of stops mixed in. You're like, I wonder how those happened. So I don't know. Their defense is weird and iffy and probably bad.
Jeffrey, I appreciate it.
All right. See ya.